On September 30th, 1938, in an ill-fated attempt to avoid war, British and French Prime Ministers Neville Chamberlain and Edouard Daladier signed the infamous Munich Agreement with Adolf Hitler. The 1919 Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I severely punished Germany. In addition to territorial losses and crippling reparations, the treaty specifically limited Germany's military to just 100,000 men. It also demilitarized the Rhineland as a buffer zone to protect France from Germany. After Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933, he began to pursue aggressive policies in direct violation of the Versailles Treaty. Shortly after seizing power, Hitler withdrew Germany from both the Geneva Disarmament Conference and the League of Nations, signaling a rejection of the Treaty of Versailles' restrictions. The Nazis then secretly began expanding Germany's military beyond the 100,000-man limit. In March 1935, Hitler publicly announced his intention to rebuild Germany's armed forces. 2 months later, France and the Soviet Union signed a treaty of friendship and mutual support. Hitler claimed this to be a hostile move and used it as justification to move forces into the Rhineland, which he did in March 1936. It was a risky proposition for the German leader, as he did not know how France and Britain would react. Because of this, he initially deployed only 3,000 soldiers to the region, with orders to immediately withdraw if foreign countries intervened. The gamble paid off, as Germany's World War I enemies were keen to avoid another war. Hitler's next big move was directed at his homeland of Austria. Annexing Austria would further his goal of uniting all German-speaking peoples into a Nazi empire. In March 1938, using a false claim that the rights of ethnic Germans in Austria had been violated, Hitler invaded. In a matter of days, Austria was joined into the German Reich in what is known as the Anschluss. Hitler then turned his focus toward Czechoslovakia, specifically to the Sudetenland, a region along the German border with a large population of ethnic Germans. The Nazi leader began to openly call for the annexation of the territory. The Czechoslovak government hoped that Britain and France would intervene if Germany invaded, but British Prime Minister Chamberlain and French Prime Minister Daladier, both eager to avoid war, opted for a policy of appeasement. After suffering the horrors of World War I just 20 years earlier, the British and French people simply had no appetite for another conflict. On a recent trip to the UK and Ireland, Mrs. Lewis and I got a sense of the impact of World War I. In seemingly every city or town we visited, big or small, there was some type of monument to those who had fought and died in the war. Often these memorials included a list of names of those from that town who had perished. It drove home why people were so desperate to avoid another war. Prime Minister Chamberlain made trips to Germany in 1938 on September 15th and 22nd. He offered Hitler favorable agreements, but the German Chancellor kept increasing his demands. On September 30th, Chamberlain and Daladier traveled to Munich, where they formally gave in to Hitler's ultimatums in the hope of peace. Chamberlain was elated at the accord, so much so that he stayed behind to sign a second document with Hitler that he was convinced would assure lasting peace between Britain and Germany. When Chamberlain flew home later that day, he was met by a cheering crowd at the airfield. He declared to those gathered, while triumphantly holding aloft the agreement, quote, "My good friends, for the second time in our history, a British Prime Minister has returned from Germany bringing peace with honor. I believe it is peace for our time." End quote. The door was now opened for Hitler to annex the Sudetenland, which he did the next day, and then proceeded to take all of Czechoslovakia months later, in a clear violation of the Munich Agreement. Less than a year after Chamberlain's triumphant Peace for Our Time speech, Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, finally pushing Britain and France to declare war. The Allies' appeasement policy backfired for Britain's leader as well. In May 1940, Chamberlain was removed as Prime Minister and replaced by Winston Churchill, whose bulldog leadership would ultimately guide Britain and its allies to victory in World War II. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1520, Suleiman the Magnificent becomes Ottoman Sultan and rules for the next 46 years. In 1889, Wyoming approves the first U.S. state constitution to grant women the right to vote. In 1927, Babe Ruth hits his 60th home run of the season, a mark that stands for 34 years. In 1949, after 15 months and 250,000 flights, the Berlin airlift comes to an official end. In 1954, the U.S. Navy commissions the Nautilus, the world's first nuclear-powered submarine. In 1955, 24-year-old movie star James Dean is killed in a car crash in Shalom, California. In 2025, AOL, which brought the internet to the masses, officially discontinues its dial-up service. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Explorers used a mini-sub to discover the shipwreck of which gold-laden steamboat off the coast of California in 1993? The Central America, the Edmund Fitzgerald, the Brother Jonathan, or the San Jose? Think you know the answer? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Find out if you're right next time on Today in History. You made it through Today in History. Nice work. Now treat yourself. Click the video on the right for what happened yesterday in history. Still can't get enough? The link on the left's got the whole playlist buffet. Want to make history a daily habit? Click my face in the middle to subscribe.